Game on, everybody, and welcome to another video. And in this video we're going to be discussing a card combo analysis specifically on the Merlin theme search cards. I just want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to all my patrons and YouTube subscribers, and thank you for everybody who also leaves a like and comments on my videos, because those little interactions go a long way. If you guys are interested in purchasing any of these cards in this video that I discussed today, please consider using my TCG player affiliate link in the description box below. Up first, we're going to go ahead and discuss Develop Your Brain. It is a one cost action that says look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your hand and the other on the bottom of your deck. This card allows you to scry and adds additional tier of consistency for Sapphire, and it is an inkable card. When discussing cards, I always like to talk about a pro and con for each of them. So a con for this card is that if you look at the top 2 cards and it doesn't contain anything useful, it can feel wasted, and it doesn't provide any immediate board presence. Up next, a very similar card and a new card for this set is Visions of the Future. It is a Scry 5 for the cost of 2. So it says look at the top 5 cards of your deck, put one into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order, just like the other card, except you look at the top 5. Same as before, but it costs 1 more ink. And the last card we're also going to discuss is Merlin Intellectual Visionary. It is the first true tutor style, a card that allows you to search your deck for any card you desire into your hand. The only con regarding this is that it's an uninkable card, and it does require you to shift on in order to get its effect. And if you guys are interested in more card in-depth discussions, you guys can go ahead and check out my other videos of me discussing different kinds of cards. What we're going to talk about is the ink cost effectiveness, and we're going to go ahead and look at a single scope, such as like in a vacuum. So Develop Your Brain, it says look at the top 2 for 1 ink, and then for Visions of the Future, it says look at the top 5 for 2 ink. And the card selection power, when it comes down to it, is that it costs 2 cards per ink for Develop Your Brain, and about 2.5 cards per ink for Visions of the Future. So what we can conclude from this is that Visions of the Future offers a better card selection per ink. This is basically showcasing that Visions of the Future is technically more ink efficient over time, because it does allow you to look for an additional half a card, even though half a cards don't exist, but bear with me, this maybe makes more sense. What this basically boils down to is that Visions of the Future is just more efficient when using ink, just because it allows you to dig a little bit deeper into your deck to find specific cards. So how can we go ahead and prove that? So with probability calculations using the hypogeometric distribution formula, I won't get into it. I've gone through many times with my other videos, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and feel free to check out my other videos. But here are some of the variables that we're going to look into, such as the deck size being at least 60 cards and our starting hand of 7, and the probability of drawing a desired card when you look at n cards out of the remaining deck size is 60 minus 7, which is 53 cards left in the deck. So when we put all of these factors and kind of put the card into a formula, we can get these different ratios. So you can see that if we use Develop Our Brain and we're really trying to find that one specific card in the scenario where we only have like 53 cards left in our deck, we can see that it's about a 3.7 about 3.8% chance of finding that desired card that you're searching for. And this is basically like what we're going to be kind of simulating, in the sense of like how we're trying to find different cards. We're just trying to find that one key card, so just kind of bear with me. A lot of these numbers will change as the deck size definitely gets thinner, so you're more likely to find your answers, but I'm just trying to speak out of like practicality. So for Vision of the Future, if we run that same exact test, we have about a 9.4 success rate of finding that specific card that we're just trying to find. And in what case if we happen to run multiple, such as what if we do 2 Develop Your Brains versus the 1 Visions of the Future? So Vision of the Future still provides a higher chance of drawing the desired card compared to Develop Your Brain, even if you were to use double Develop Your Brain. The probability per ink is still higher for Vision of the Future, because that cost is basically 2.5 cards per ink, whereas Develop Your Brain is still at that top 2 cards. So even if you play 2 Develop Your Brains, you're only looking at 4, and you do get to add the additional card from your deck to your hand. But mathematically, Visions of the Future is a better card than Develop Your Brain in terms of card selection and efficiency per ink. But of course, every card is situational and has its moment to shine depending on what type of turns we are in the game. So in early game, turns 1 through 3 is what I kind of like to categorize this as. So Develop Your Brain at 1 ink is a lot easier to cast because we do have a lot lower ink at our disposal. and this allows for quicker deck cycling and much better hand improvements. It's useful for low cost and early game digging, so much more of like aggressive decks that maybe you're trying to find a very key strategy. Unfortunately though, Sapphire doesn't seem to be much of an aggro style early game deck. It's still kind of caters towards the mid to late game, but this is something to consider, that if you're trying to finish the game as quickly as possible and you need those answers fast, Develop Your Brain is technically better for that. Now, when we look at Visions of the Future, it is more expensive, so it might delay your other plays because we're limited on our resources. However, it is more significant for deck cycling, which provides a better chance of finding those critical cards if you are just missing out on those answers. It is more costly and can potentially delay your early aggro strategies, but offers a significant chance of finding that key card. Let's go ahead and discuss mid to late game, which is about turn 4 and beyond. So Develop Your Brain is still efficient and can be impactful. It's just a smaller chance of you finding your key cards, just because we're only sifting through the top 2. But like I said, it's still efficient and useful. It's just less effective, especially as we get more ink in our inkwell. We're kind of just not maximizing our ink when comparing it to Visions of the Future, because that is much more impactful and allows for better card selection and deck manipulation. So to me, it is the more superior choice due to better card selection to help you find those critical cards when trying to close out those games. So how do these cards fare against the Shift Merlin Intellectual Visionary? First, we should go ahead and take a look at all the valid shift targets. On the top row, we have Merlin Squirrel, Turtle, and Shapeshifter. Now, these haven't really seen play. The Turtle is brand new, and we'll have to see how it goes. But the Turtle seems to be an upgraded version of Squirrel for more ink cost. But if you do need a cheap shift target, Squirrel could see some play. It's technically the Amethyst theme color Morph. I did also want to include Morph because whenever we talk about potential shift targets, Morph is always going to be included. And then the more common ones that we have are the Merlin Crab, Goat, and Rabbit. But truthfully, these cards aren't really the ones you want to shift over on top of. They're probably going to be the ones you do primarily, but you're going to lose out on the advantage of having that specific character leave from play. And if you plan on just playing just a blue strategy without the Amethyst package, you do have some other options, such as the Merlin back from the Bermudas and Self-Appointed Mentor. And truthfully, these are very expensive at 4 cost, but just like how the Rabbit and the Goat is. But if you really wanted to try to play this card with another color combination that isn't Amethyst, you can consider just playing these cards as targets, and we'll go ahead and discuss more as far as ratio goes later in this video. So let's go ahead and break down the probability of obtaining a valid shift target, assuming that we're just playing 4 of the low end Merlin targets and 4 copies of Merlin Intellectual Visionary by turn 5. So we want to hit the combo of playing a shiftable Merlin by turn 4, and then on turn 5 we can just shift right on top of that target with on 5 right on curve. And so if our deck size is estimated to be a minimum of 60 and hand size is 12 because we're simulating additional draws, and this isn't even including like the hard mulligan system that Lorcana has, but if we're playing the 4 shift Merlins and the 4 shift targets for Merlin, this comes out to approximately 34.94% chance of getting this obtainable per the game. So about 1 in every 3 games, you should be reliably pulling off this combo, as what the math showcases. Now we need to compare that 34.94% to the Scry ability of Visions of the Future by turn 4, Develop Your Brain by turn 1, and 2 copies of Develop Your Brain on turn 2. And this is what the math comes out to. So what we have is the ratio of key cards. So this scope is varied because let's say the key card that we're trying to find, well, you can play anywhere between 1 to 4 copies of that card, and this is what it comes out to. So if I were to, for example, play Visions of the Future on turn 2 and I play 4 copies of that card, theoretically I should be able to see that card 30.06% of the time. And if you guys are interested, you guys can go ahead and check out the rest of this graph here. I hope everybody got a little screenshot out of that. I'm going to go ahead and move on. So let's go ahead and better compare all scenarios, because what we really need to compare is the shift capability of turn 5 and how these cards perform also on turn 5. Because let's say we can't get that combo set up, and what our goal is to try to reach beyond 34.94% to be technically more successful than the shift targets. So I'm going to go ahead and hide myself for here. And if we were to compare these cards with the shift Merlin on turn 5, we can actually see Visions of the Future is more successful if we compare it to cards of copies that we're trying to find at copies of 2, 3, and 4 per deck. Anywhere else, the shift Merlin is just more valuable. However, what we do need to consider is that which is better, because we have to also take account for the searcher probability and the previous probability that was showcased. So the probability of you finding a searcher by turn 5 is about 60.1%. You then multiply that value with the previous rates that I showcased before, and we're going to go ahead and just look at Visions of the Future 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see the only more successful than the shift Merlin is if you play 4 copies of a specific card, trying to scry for that specific key card with Visions of the Future, and that comes out to about 36.12% success rate, which is slightly more successful than the 34.94% rate. However, what you also need to consider is that the 34.94% success rate will 100% give you the guaranteed success rate of finding that search card, whereas there's a lot of minor factors that have to be considered when you play Visions of the Future trying to scry for that one particular key card. So what I hope this gives you insight to is that it helps you make a decision as to which is more better for you. Would you think it's more consistent and reliable for you to hit that 36.12% and have it as like a backup plan? Because I mean, you will likely open the Merlin combo with the shift target 34.94, which is about 35% of the time, or for an additional 1% more, you can go ahead and play 4 copies of that specific key card that you're trying to find, which I mean, most decks probably don't even play 4 copies anymore. And with the inclusion of Merlin, you can really get away with interesting deck building of trying to play tech cards at 1 or 2 copies, because the cards you're searching are probably those ones of at 1 or 2 copies, and Merlin at 34.94% success rate will get you that card 100% of the time. Whereas that if you do Visions of the Future, you have to hit it 60% of the time, and then on top of that you have to hit the probability, which comes out to these rates of 12% or 22-ish%. Another thing I wanted to go ahead and discuss is that could you and should you play Develop Your Brain and Visions of the Future together? So mathematically, the optimal ratio of any type of card game is that you play the max copies. You play the 4 ratios of each card, and it proves that this is the highest probability of drawing a selected card at any point during the game. The only drawback that this has is that it has a really high chance of redundancy and can cause less impactful searches with no medium board presence. Because if you play Visions of the Future and you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and 2 of them end up being Develop Your Brain, well, it's kind of like you only really search for the top 3 cards of your deck, because there's no way that, I mean, maybe in super niche scenarios you will add a Develop Your Brain and you'll play it and dig too deep, but there's probably way better combos than that. So what I would propose is that the optimal or more practical ratio is to play 3 copies of Vision of the Future and 2 copies of Develop Your Brain. This combination balances the higher card selection power of Vision of the Future with early game utility of Develop Your Brain, ensuring a practical and efficient deck composition. Because ultimately, if you end up seeing Develop Your Brain way too late in the game, you can just ink it. And if you see Visions of the Future too early in the game and you kind of are saving it for key card search at the later stages of the game, you can also just ink that early game. So really kind of just it provides a little bit more flexibility. And this is how we can determine how many copies of Develop Your Brain and Visions of the Future we should play, And this is a heat map. I'm not going to go ahead and read all that to you. You're more than welcome to pause and read for yourself. But this kind of just showcases the intersection point of where copies of Develop Your Brain and Vision of the Future line up at the 3 to 2, where it's basically a full populated square, closest to the bottom left for our most optimal ratios. And then I kind of highlighted the different little squares area so you guys can go ahead and see where the overlap is. And technically any range, you could do like 3-3, but like I said, I have suggested optimal ratios from my take. But if you can do like 1 Develop Your Brain and then 3 copies of Visions of the Future. But I don't like really playing one-ofs. But this is kind of like the best, like most closest kind of ratio wise that I was able to come up with. And I just kind of wanted to showcase a heat map alternative or a visual representation for you guys. Another thing we're going to go ahead and discuss is how many Shift Merlin targets should you play. So there's already plenty of decks that Ruby Amethyst, for example, they play like I think 10 to 12 Merlins, and then there's like ratios in between that, like because people are cutting crabs time to time, people are adding them back in. So what I kind of wanted to go ahead and showcase to everybody is, I'm going to go ahead and hide my camera again. This is basically the optimal ratios as to find, this is just a probability of drawing at least 1 shift target by turn 4 is how we were able to graph this up using hypergeometric distribution as well. And the purpose of this is to basically try to find the point of diminishing returns and probability of success, and it seems to be around the range from 10 to 12 copies of Merlin, not the big shift Merlin, although you could use Merlin to shift on top of Merlin again because it's all Merlin. But optimally, it seems like you'll hit about a 90% success rate around the 10 to 12 range. Anything more beyond 12 seems to have much more diminishing returns. So you want to really kind of reliably find those shiftable Merlin targets. Really quickly, guys, I just want to go ahead and bring another example. Now that we've decided that somewhere between 10 to 12 Merlins are the more ideal targets, the number that was previously the 34%, it comes up to, if we play 10 shift targets, comes up to 54.2%. So you're basically going to be able to pull off this combo more than half of the time expected. Quickly, here is just a breakdown of what I was able to describe visually, but if you're more of a reader, you're happy to read here. I just wanted to quickly say thank you guys so very much for taking the time to watch my video. Please, if you guys enjoy the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more nerdy Lorcana deck building theories and content like this. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out of here.